Yeah. Aye. Lionel and Patrick, what a pair, thinking outside the box. They don't play fair, unconventional ways, breaking all the rules, making their own path, never following the fools. Unconventional playbook, rewriting the game. Lionel and Patrick, they'll never be the same. Dancing to their own beat in a world so plain. Unconventional playbook, they're here to entertain. Lionel's a dreamer with stars in his eyes. Patrick's a schemer with tricks in disguise. Together they're unstoppable, a force to be reckoned with. Their unconventional playbook, they'll never be second. Unconventional playbook, rewriting the game. Lionel and Patrick, they'll never be the same. Dancing to their own beat in a world so plain. Unconventional playbook, they're here to entertain. Against all odds they stand tall. Through highs and lows they never fall. Lionel and Patrick, a duo so rare. With their unconventional playbook, they're always there. Unconventional playbook, rewriting the game. Lionel and Patrick, they'll never be the same. Dancing to their own beat in a world so plain. Unconventional playbook, they're here to entertain.
Powered by Riverside FM.
Welcome to another edition of Unconventional Playbook. Please hit that like and subscribe button. Keep that algorithm going. We're growing by leaps and bounds, so please continue to support the UP. Got my guy in the house, Mr. Patrick Buchanan. Pat, what's up, man?
Nothing much, Coach. What's up, man? Right here again, another episode for the UP. It's Sunday. We exactly a Sunday away from, you know what time it is, one
Yes,
Sunday
sir.
away from it. It was great to have college football, though, yesterday.
Oh, man, this was like a holiday for me. Once Thursday hit, I got in my recliner, watched the Gopher game. That led me into the weekend. Unfortunately, the Gophers lost to North Carolina, missed a field goal at the end, but that led me into Saturday, watched some good football early. And then I had a chance to sit down and watch my Buckeyes. I was pretty pleased. Will Howard looked pretty good. To be national champs, though, we got to get a little bit better. But this is just the first game of the season, and I'm probably the most critical Ohio State fan there is. And I watched a lot of good football yesterday. Obviously, there's a good game going on right now with LSU. So it's just been the opening day of college football is like a holiday to me, Pat. I just love it.
Yeah, it's every time the opening is week one and not 0 week, right? I love week one because that means week two, you're going to get Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
Yes.
That's when it goes down. So that's got me excited for that. So yeah, man, it was good to get ready for, the season, right? This is the season. What else? It's the season. So yeah. Getting ready for it, man. But yeah, let's get some of that Vikings going on.
Yeah, college football is here, but let's transition to the NFL. Lots of news going on with the Vikings. One thing that we haven't had an opportunity to talk about, we could touch on it a little bit, but I know there's a bigger story. The whole Mike Zimmer thing has blown up. The article from the Star Tribune. Mark Craig got a detailed interview with Mike Zimmer, and Mike Zimmer had some strong comments. I can't wait to get into those with you, see what your thoughts are. I did a spotlight podcast on the UP about the whole Mike Zimmer thing, but I know there's a lot of the UP audience that wants to get your opinion on it, see what you think. We can have a conversation about it. Before we get into that, though, we had a quarterback change.
Yeah.
And I know that you and I on our last podcast, we were talking about, is there going to be some more movement in that quarterback room? And you and I weren't quite sure. And then a couple of days later, they brought in Brett Rippon, who, if I'm not mistaken, I remember you and I were on the pod and we were talking about how he lit up the Hall of Fame game.
Yeah.
And yeah. And now he's a Minnesota Viking. I've had a chance to talk to some people in Skol Nation, Viking Nation, and UP Nation, and it's kind of split down the line. Some people are really upset that Jaron Hall had to go, and some people are happy with the move because they saw what Brett Rippon did in past and in preseason. Just kind of wanted to get your thoughts. Were you surprised, and are you happy with the move that the Minnesota Vikings made?
I don't like right away. It was like what, but the whole front thing is we talked about Ripken, right? And his stats is nice during the preseason. I mean, the kid, he was slinging the ball, right? He could sling the ball, he could pass the ball, like without a doubt, he could play football. But Jaron Hall's last two games, and knowing he knows the system, like I didn't understand it, but once again, I'm not in. I'm gonna support it. He's the number 3 quarterback. If you're looking at things, what I saw with Ripken, with like the second team and doing the things that he did, like I'm gonna just be honest, he can be the backup quarterback, right? He can pass by Mullins, right?
Right.
He's that type of quarterback. So
Yep.
that's my only opinion on it, right? I'm always roll with the guys that we draft and support them and do the best I can with the supporting them. But I understand Ripken's arm talent, and he does have some really, 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 really good arm talent. But I just, I didn't pay attention what happened with Jaron Hall now, right? Because I didn't even pay attention. So I'll support it. It is what it is. I don't have one of these ones where, I'm putting a stamp on whether I'm upset or stamp on I'm happy with the move. So I'm just in the middle as well.
Yeah, we had a couple of podcasts ago, we were talking about, we're breaking down the 53. We were talking about what certain players were doing. And the one thing you taught me, I've always been a fan of football, not necessarily a coach. You have coached the game. So one of the things you taught me was, twos going against twos, three going against threes. And I think the one thing that Brett Rippon has over Jaron Hall, me personally, I think it's an upgrade. And I know people are emotionally attached to Jaron Hall. They wanted to, he was a draft pick from BYU. They wanted to see him make it here. But Brett Rippon has a resume against ones.
Yeah.
And his stats don't knock you down when you look at him on a sheet of paper, but he's done some decent things against ones. If you look at Jaron Hall's body of work against ones, it ain't good.
No,
I mean, it's just not good. And it's really upsetting because he was trending in the right direction in preseason. You're absolutely right about that. I mean, Jaron Hall was arguably playing his best football that he's played in a Minnesota Viking uniform during the preseason, but he was doing that against twos, mainly threes. His resume against ones just wasn't great. And I think Kwesi and those guys saw an opportunity to bring in, it's a number 3. But I also think, man, they're kind of looking for the future. They're looking for a backup to J.J. McCarthy when J.J. McCarthy takes the reins. And I think that's why you're starting to see the quarterback carousel come through the Minnesota Vikings. They're looking for that diamond in the rough. And I don't know if Brett Rippon's that guy, but I know that his resume is a little bit better than Jaron Hall's.
Yeah, I mean, here's the one thing. If we look at last year and we look at the number of quarterbacks we went through, right?
Yeah.
And let's say Sam Darnold goes down. I'm not going to throw the negative out there. I'm going to say he goes down, right?
Yeah.
So then you got Mullins, who's Mr. I can give it away sometimes, right? But Mr. I could drop off 400 and a couple touchdowns, right? So
Yeah.
you don't know what happens there. Maybe he's struggling or maybe he goes down. Well, I'm being honest. So this is the place now where I lean hard on Ripken more than Jaron Hall, right? So if this is the scenario we want to talk about, and we talk about these guys go down, where Ripken is a guy that I'm comfortable with, that you're not scrambling to go find or trade with a team, give up any assets. You have it in Ripken. So they can go from the 1 to 2 to 3 if someone goes down and have a serviceable quarterback out there that can throw the football and play the game. I believe at a decently high level. Like they can play it at, whether, let's just say I believe that even Ripken fits in the category of 64, right? And what I mean by that is starter and backup. So if you ask me, I think Ripken is a top 64 quarterback in this league. So I'll say it that way. So in that sense, you got a number 3 right now that's part of the top 64, which if anything happens, you're good.
Love that. Love that take, because you saw how deep we had to go last year when it came to quarterbacks. I mean, you never know if you're going to have to reach down to your third quarterback and have that person come in and be a serviceable quarterback. We didn't have that luxury last year.
No.
So now with this move, I think our quarterback room is better. And I think that, I mean, God forbid something happens to Sam Darnold, but if it does, we've got 2 pretty solid backups to come in and be serviceable for the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, definitely. We'll get into that, later episode, right? But what are the expectations for this year anyway? So I'll get into that later that way with my it's coming up, y'all.
Woo, I can't
Friday
wait.
or Saturday, it's coming out, the season projection. So get ready for that. I'm getting ready for it. So
I can't wait. Something that came out, the last 48 hours, I don't think anybody expected. Mike Zimmer has made some comments, Pat, and Zim has been pretty quiet since he left the building. That's why, if this happened, a week after he left, even a couple of months after he left, like, I can get that. But it's been a couple of years. He's now the defensive coordinator with the Dallas Cowboys, and I know Mark Craig came and put a tape recorder in front of him and asked him some questions. I'm just surprised at the venom that came out of Zim. He is still upset about a lot of things. I want to go through some of the stuff that was said by Mike Zimmer. See, I'm going to call it out, Pat. I'm going to call it out because this is unconventional playbook. This is the UP. And I remember when Mike Zimmer was brought in to the Minnesota Vikings, I was in full support of him getting hired. He took over from Leslie Frazier, and it is a very tough road for African-American coaches in the NFL. That's why they put in the Rooney Rule. It's been a road that is littered with obstacles. And so usually when you have a coach of color that gets fired, the one narrative that is always usually brought up after that coach is fired is the new regime or the GM or whoever you want to call it will always throw out the word discipline. Mike Zimmer was brought in to instill discipline in the Minnesota Vikings. So that means he runs a tight ship. That means he runs a professional ship. That means he knows what the hell he's doing. And now all this stuff is coming out, and it just bewilders me that the Vikings could even win football games when you have the leader, the face of their program, not talking to his quarterback, franchise quarterback, not talking to his GM, and running an environment where people thought it was toxic. I know you've had an opportunity to kind of research some of the words that Zimmer said. Just to start, when you first started reading some of this stuff, what were your thoughts?
Bitter. Like, first thing is bitter. And there was one of my thoughts, and the second thought is, dude, you're in Dallas right now. What did you think? What did you worry about something that happened 3, 4, 5 years ago? Right? Move on, right? But I bitter, move past it. But things that, if they did occur, would upset me, though. I'm going to just tell you that. Some of the things, if they occurred with Spellman, I'd be upset too as head coach. But at the same moment, I think you took the wrong approach. You weren't a leader anymore because of the way things happen, right? So, I mean, once if that's me getting in depth with it, first thing that I want to touch on, Coach, because I know you're going to read it, right, is, the 2021 draft.
Yes.
The 2021 draft, the Spillman, usually talks, and as we see, Kwesi talks with his guys, right? With KLC and B Flow about it. And supposedly in 2021, he didn't talk to him, and he drafted 4 guys that he thought was backups, Kellen Mond included, right?
Yep.
And he walked out after the pick. So, hell, like, and Kellen Mond admits he never even talked to the head coach ever before. So,
Right.
if that really happened, and you made that without talking to me, and I'm the coach, like, yeah, man, yeah. Like, I'm gonna just start with that one, right? There's more
Okay.
things we're gonna be able to touch in it, but right there, I can't be mad at Zim. But let's express it in 2021. Let's not express it in 2024. Like, there's
Right.
nothing that can go back and be done, because right now what you're doing is you're bashing young men. And I don't appreciate you bashing whatever you feel the talent was of those guys. How you're coming out bashing them right now is non-acceptable. If you wanted to critique something and, blow up you and Spellman stuff in 2021, do it then. But right now you're talking backwards about what you thought of young men. No, those young men were going to get drafted. They were professional, whether they're backup or not, right? You don't have to go and bash at them, because I feel like the rhetoric, and yes, it's us reading, right, an article, but the way that it's coming off, right, is that, like, is super negative about these young men coming into it. And I get it, they weren't your guys, but there's a different way that you can approach that. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I'll just throw out there real quick. I know that Zimmer, he scraped and climbed his way to the top, to be able to become a NFL head coach. It's something that he always wanted to do, and he worked his butt off to get that. And along that road, he had some real big time obstacles. Life intervened. He had his wife pass away. And then, after he left the Vikings, his son passed away. So he's had some obstacles in his life that, sometimes when you go through traumatic things like that, your behaviors that you exhibit in the future don't necessarily mirror what your character is. So I will give him that out. We all face disappointments in our life. But here's what I'll say. Pat, you are in a position of discipline. Your 9-to-5 job, you are in a position of discipline and leadership where you work. Same thing with me. I am in a position of discipline and leadership where I work. There are things on a daily basis that I'm sure on your job makes you really upset. And there are some things in my job that make me really upset. But you have to have a little tact, and you have to have a little professionalism. I can't imagine running an organization, being a head coach of an organization where my boss essentially overrides what my opinion is. I can understand him being upset and being mad and drafting players that I didn't necessarily want. But you knew the game when you signed up for it. You know the hierarchy of the Minnesota Vikings, and you just can't get up and leave and go home. That is the most unprofessional thing that I have ever heard, because now you're compromising everything. In terms of meetings after the draft, conversations that you could have, possible trades. Now you're not in the room because you're in your feelings, and you're going to get up. You're an NFL coach. You're in your feelings, and now you're going to get up and leave the whole process because you're upset because you didn't get the guys that you want. I just think it's very unprofessional, man.
Yeah, that is unprofessional. But I want to go with it another way. Like, everyone looks at Kwesi and KOC like connected together, right? One goes, the other
Yep.
goes, right? One gets extended, the other's getting extended, right? It's a partnership, right?
Yep.
And when one doesn't work with the other, that causes an issue, right? And that can
Yeah.
cause an issue. we don't all handle things the right way in those moments, right? I've been in those where, like, I've been at my job 11 years, right? And I'll just be honest, the people that I talk to or whatever, well, they haven't done it at all, ever done my job, and they may not have been in a position as long as I've been doing mine, right? So
Yep.
I'm just being honest. Like, when I see a different vision and we're bumping heads about it and you're trying to tell me something else, yeah, I gotta be obviously I gotta be smart in the way that I respond, right? I bite my tongue a lot. You can read my facial expressions when we're in those meetings, right? But I go to my office, I close the door, and I vent, right? I have my circle, like that's why it's this community of ADs, right? I have them to go through the vent, right? I finish out my meetings though when I need to vent, and I call them up. Zim could have did the same thing, and I know that was tough. Like, it's easy for us to sit right here and say, "How do you walk out?" when that man, I'm telling you one thing and you go and do something else, right? Like, yes, there's so many different people who scouting department, whatever. But if you look at this past year's draft, I'm pretty sure you saw Quasi and KOC, like you saw the communication within that draft room,
Yes.
right? Like you saw the what's the word I'm looking for? The
Collaboration.
collaboration. Yep. So with each other, if that wasn't happening, man, that's a really, really, really bad thing going on. And that's why everything blew up for him, right? Right there was no trust anymore, right? So Zim lost trust in Spellman. Well, maybe Spellman made the decision because he had started losing trust in Zim. Who knows, right? But it was that once that happened, that's why it all, like, somebody torched it. Somebody torched the Minnesota Vikings organization, and that wasn't what the Wilfs was about. So they both had to go.
Yeah, you brought up KOC and Quasi. And again, I think you're smart by saying we don't know. We don't know what goes on in the building, in the room. We get a glimpse of what's going on when they open the curtain and allow us to see stuff, right? I just remember when the news broke that Kirk Cousins was moving on to Atlanta. And I remember KOC and Quasi had that press conference together. And it was obvious to me that KOC was pretty upset that they couldn't get the deal done with Kirk Cousins, at least for one more year. Body language was bad. I have never seen KOC look like that during the press conference. I mean, he barely looked up from his sheet of paper, and usually he's really engaged. And I thought that I'm sure that he and Quasi had some conversations behind the scene, and Quasi basically told him, look, we couldn't sign Kirk for that amount of money. This is what he wanted. I'm going to get you a quarterback. Just be patient with me. I'm going to get you your guy. And now the Vikings have J.J. McCarthy. But if they both didn't have that professionalism, if KOC didn't have that professionalism, you're right. That's when things start to get torched, and that's when things really start to break down. And it's unfortunate to hear some of that stuff going on with Mike Zimmer when he was the coach of the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, and I'm gonna keep you right there because that was part of the issues that came up in this article. Right, was Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins' contract handcuffed him from getting the defensive players he wanted. Right, so now fast forward 4 years, right, and now 3 years, and now Quasi makes a decision like you're expressing. KOC didn't like it. But it's almost like I'm an athletic director, so my coaches don't like the decision, but sometimes I'm making bigger decisions than that they can't see and that they'll see the good result of, but they can't see it in that moment, right?
Right.
No matter what it is. I won't step in your program and mess with your X's and O's, but this is a bigger decision that's bigger than you and I that I have to make. Well, financially, that decision that Quasi had to make, right? Look at the players they were able to sign on the defense because he made that decision not to sign Kirk Cousins. So if I'm Mike Zimmer, right, which I'll say it out loud, a stat patter, let's go get a different quarterback than this stat patter, right, this person who's going to pad stats, right, and allow me to get younger on the defense. When they got the defense, like if he wasn't allowed in 2021 to get some defensive players to allow him to play his defense. Now, you notice when Zimmer came, his defense went like this, and then it started to do that because now, if this really happened, it's because he couldn't start to put different people in position to make that defense continue to elevate like this because we were spending that money. We were handcuffed by Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, we all know Kirk Cousins was strapping the Vikings for money, and I think, honestly, the Green Bay Packers are going to go through the same stuff with Jordan Love. Like when you invest that amount of money in a quarterback, Pat, you better be right, man. This better be a guy that even if you're deficient on the defensive end, can override that and get you to the promised land. If you come up short, you are going to pay for it because now the salaries are only getting bigger. The cap is only getting bigger. You're going to see contracts from quarterbacks that are up in the $50, $60 million. I mean, I don't know what Dak Prescott's going to get, but he's going to get a lot of money when he signs. He's probably going to get somewhere north of $60 million. So you're right. Kirk Cousins strapped this team where Zimmer, for the most part, and he said this, Pat. Zimmer said, we were winning 10 games a year with really good defense and quarterbacks that were less than what Kirk Cousins supposedly was. And so I think Zimmer really wanted to stick with that formula, and obviously Spielman didn't see eye to eye with them, and that caused that friction.
And the decision that Spielman made led to firings on both. Like I'm a be honest. Like if like a Case Keenum, it's gonna win you 10 football games and get us to the playoffs and win a playoff football game. Like let's continue to build from that and grow from that with the cheaper money. Yeah, in that sense, right now, until you get your guy, right? Because eventually you're gonna have to find your guy at quarterback, right? So if it was working, it was working. And if you're going to get a guy, get a bona fide guy. They got a guy that can go win some games, but let's be honest, that defense did a lot. Like that defense would have to be on the field a lot when it came with Kirk Cousins. And that's just being honest, right? The 3-and-outs, the number of 3-and-outs, the number of just, bonehead throws that he makes, right, in certain situations. Yeah, there were so many times where the man could throw the ball down the field and we like, oh my goodness, whatever. But he felt he needed a defense, to do it. And what's wrong with doing that the right way, right? I look at the teams that win. You got to have to even get to the Super Bowl. You got to have a top 10 defense. You can't get there without a top 10 defense. I haven't seen a team in the Super Bowl. Tell me the last team you've seen in the Super Bowl without a top 10 defense.
Yeah, you would be hard-pressed to find one.
That's be very hard-pressed to find, right? Always go back to when Aaron Rodgers won the Super Bowl in 2005, I think it was, right? Their defense was one of the worst defenses through the regular season, but in the playoffs, they were the number one defense. Somehow it switched, right? So it happens, but right now, we're talking about in the last 5-6 years, you got to have a top defense. You got to have a top 10 defense to even get to that place. And if the defense was going to fall off because you were going to strap yourself, teams are going to feel it, right? Teams are going to feel it, right? The Tom Brady's that took the discounts, the Patrick Mahomes that take the discounts, the guys that take those discounts, you're going to see it. Like, I'll talk about a team who, like, I'm going to just switch to even your Cleveland Browns, coach. They got the number 1 or 2 defense in the NFL, I believe, right?
Right.
But this window is going to shrink because of Deshaun Watson's contract.
Yeah, he better be the guy because they are so strapped. They won't be able to consistently continue to fill out that team. And here's the dagger in that one. His contract is fully guaranteed.
Yep.
So there is no running from that money. There is no dead cap. There is none of that stuff. He's got to perform, or it's all going to blow up in the Cleveland Browns' face.
Yeah, he restructured. I think he gave him $5 million in the restructured. So, hey, he gave him some change back. He's like, oh, man, take the little $5 million. I've been injured. So, So, yeah, Yeah, I get where Zim's coming from, but once again, I just think it's a dollar too late to have this interview.
Yeah. The Wilfs, when they told Zim that they would not be bringing him back, they asked him if he wanted to address the team. And I quote, Zim said, "Hell no, they got me fired." Now, here's what I'm going to say about that. You know, again, man, you don't know what people are going through. All right. But here's what I'm going to tell Zim. If Zim was sitting in a room for me, you have guys that have gave their knees for you, that has gave their shoulders, their ankles, their Achilles for you to help you win ball games, that helped you put food on your table. Like, these guys are sacrificing every day. Yeah, they're millionaires, but these guys put their bodies through hell for you. And so when you know you're not coming back, you don't even have the decency, again, because you're caught up in your feelings, to go into that room and do what's right. You can have hard feelings about those guys all you want, and maybe they didn't perform up to their expectations. Only Zim, the coach, knows that, what he was trying to do with those guys. But it's the decent thing to do, to go in that room and address those guys because of all they have sacrificed to help you become the coach that you want to become. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the owners have relationships, Zimmer, and they're going to have conversations. This is your first 3 years later. Now you have a job, right? I don't know what you're going to do in the coaching room to get a job, but you can feel like you can point a finger and feel like others got you fired, but you got to look in the mirror and look at what you did, right? When you run a tight ship like he runs, and I know I'm an old school type of coach, but after a couple of years, you got to ease off, right? And we could see within your last year, just watching, like, like, you should have known you was fired when you and Kirk Cousins, they investing that money in him. When you go into a shoving match during a game with your quarterback.
Yep.
Like, right there, it's over. And I hear about right now how Jalen Hurts and his quarterback, his coach, right, isn't on the same page. And that's all you heard. But you'll never see him be either of those two be unprofessional in that setting. And I believe you and Kurt were both unprofessional in that setting. I'm glad you both aren't here. So to look at that and to say they got you fired, okay, whatever. Whether they got you fired or not, whole character, right? You're supposed to be the leader, the head coach, right? You're supposed to be this guy who, you're the older one. You have the old school. You were teaching them things. Would you have ever told them just walk away and say F you, right? Pretty much give them the finger, right? If you really felt, it doesn't even matter if you felt, because, the part that I touch in that is why I felt like you should have. And this is what you taught people, or what their upbringing was. He talked about Boyd, right? Because Boyd made a comment about him. So he makes a comment about Boyd like he was the most penalized special teams person. Right. Do you think Boyd fired back at him, Coach?
No.
He said, "I still love you."
Yeah.
See, that's character right there, Zim. And you one of them grumpy old men that we have in this world, in this society, that don't change and can't adapt to things, right? And you got to change from that, because your heart is in the wrong place, and you got to fix your heart, because you got to know how to forgive and move forward.
Yeah, he also said that before he got fired, he thought he was going to get an opportunity to go to Dallas. And he said that the owners, the Wilfs, came out and publicly gave their support for Mike Zimmer staying the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings. And he said, when owners do that, you're gone. And so he said he messed around and won that playoff game against against the Saints. It's the only playoff game that Kirk Cousins has ever won in his career. But he thought that if he wouldn't have won that game, and he almost sounded now 2 years later to be disappointed that he ended up winning that game, because he said, right now, I would probably be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. He messed around and won that game. And so things could have been different if he had not won that game. What'd you think of those comments?
Who thinks like that, though?
I'm just
like that. Like,
hey,
I get it. You listen, you can go down there to the Big D, right? Dallas Cowboys, America's team. Like, people can be fans on here, and you people of Dallas. Like, if you really want to go there, then you should have quit the job and went to Dallas, right? So you can try to, you and Jerry Jones can still try to find the glory days from the 90s. Ain't no Troy Aikman, ain't no Emmitt Smith, ain't no Michael Irvin, ain't no Deion Sanders down there, right? That's dead, right? You know, but that's just me, like, that you're there now, okay? Mike McCarthy screws up, you're gonna go in there because Jerry Jones don't believe in evolving. So go ahead and deal with that circus down there, because that's a circus. And I'm gonna tell you right now, you looking at that right now. Like, let's just be honest. That is a circus. What is going on in TCO Stadium? Is it a circus? Is it a clown show? No, it's not. It's a fantastic culture that has been built in that building. So I shouldn't have lost it. Like, man, this is where I'm not. I was, like I said, I was happy when he was a Bengal. I loved watching him as a Bengal coach, defense coordinator, right? I love what he brought us his first couple of years. But then, the team was, we looked horrible on defense, right? And you and Spielman had whatever. I haven't thought about Zimmer at all, Coach.
Yeah.
You know why?
Well,
there's this young brother that's over there named Brian Flores. I ain't thought of nothing about no Zimmer.
Yeah.
Come on, man. It's
yeah.
KOC and Flores.
Listen, man, my only objective in bringing all this up is because you have certain coaches that I'll just probably say as kindly as I can are an acquired taste, and people hold these kind of coaches up in terms of their resume and having a high pedigree and all this good stuff. I'll throw out another name for you. Bobby Knight was the same type of dude. Like, people ignore some of the stuff that was going on, and they just kind of look at the win-loss column and they automatically say that he's a legendary, iconic coach. And I'm not here to throw Bobby Knight under the bus. That's not my agenda. But it's funny when it's convenient how people ignore things that certain coaches do. And this is a guy that was brought in to instill discipline, okay? And when you use those words, Patrick, when you use those words of, I'm going to bring this guy in to install some discipline, what you're saying is the previous coaching staff, meaning Leslie Frazier, was undisciplined.
Yep.
That's essentially what you're saying. And so now here's the guy that you brought in to save the organization and bring some professionalism to the organization and to bring some discipline for the organization. And now that all this stuff is coming out, we're finding out that there's a lot of stuff going on behind the curtain. Man, I could go on for days with this. He said he was hurt by criticism from people like Eric Kendricks, Terrence Newman, and my guy Paul Allen. Now, Terrence Newman, Pat, he said was like his son. And so when he was let go, Terrence Newman came out and he was asked about the culture and the environment in the Minnesota Vikings organization. He was asked a question. He was not seeking any sort of attention from it. And he said, well, I thought it was a toxic environment. This rubbed Zimmer the wrong way. And so Zimmer contacted Terrence Newman and said, hey, I heard you said these things about me. And Terrence Newman said, well, that's how I felt the environment was. I felt it was toxic. And Zimmer said, okay, well, we're done then. And they have not spoken since. Now, this is a guy that out of Zimmer's mouth, he said, this guy was like a son to me. And that relationship was so important to Zimmer that as soon as Terrence Newman said something that he didn't like. He destroyed that relationship in a heartbeat. Your thoughts on that?
It's that this me and you have a relationship for shoot,
Years.
3 decades, right? Like I'm counting it. I think I was 16. Whatever. So let's just say this. I'm just painting this picture.
Yeah.
We got this relationship. You come to me. Well, I express something like, Coach, man, I'm watching things going on, and I don't think they're going right at Viterbo. Like the coach over here, look at how the girls respond. Like if I'm telling you that, and you get mad at me, and you don't want to deal with me anymore because I'm expressing to someone who I care about what's going on bad culture-wise, right? I'm a leader. I'm one of your veterans, right? That's one of your veterans. That's how he feel. He's in it. You're looking on it. That means you're too headstrong. Zimmer's too headstrong to hear from someone else how it's going. Right?
Yep.
We know that it was toxic. The reason it was toxic, and we could talk about culture right now with them, is because when they hired KOC, what were they hiring? Right? They were hiring a player's coach.
Yep.
They were hiring someone. Everyone who steps in this organization says what? This is a organization that will care for you and whatever, right? You listen to JJ's parents talk about it. You listen to all the free agents when they came to visit, the rookies when they came to visit. This is the parents of these players. This is an organization I feel likes to take care of my son, right?
Look, hey, Pat, you saw it with the Kyrie Jackson deal when he passed away from his tragic car accident. You saw how the Minnesota Vikings organization rallied to that family.
Yes, 100% rally. So the point I'm trying to make is, Zimmer, that wasn't coming out of TCO Stadium, right? I'm right next door and I have relationships there, and what was coming out of there was all negativity. Like it was, people were walking on eggshells. It was tension in the building with you, Zim. So you're mad that someone is calling you out. So basically, you don't have a self-reflective mirror. You're stuck in your way. That's how I look at it, right? If this is Terrence Newman is in my opinion, at some point is going to be a Hall of Famer, right?
Yeah.
So you're talking about a defensive back who's going to be a Hall of Famer at some point. Terrence Newman has won, right? So what are we talking about? We're talking about, so the players can't tell you how toxic they feel like something is. It was toxic. If you and Spellman have a bad relationship going on, toxic. If you and the starting quarterback aren't on the same page and you have that's toxic. So you're talking about the leaders of the organization, the GM and the quarterback, and players that because you didn't want them drafted, you ignore them or you treat people like whatever, and you're this all the time. Like that's just toxic, right? And I get it because I've been on that side where I've been in my way as a coach, right? Because I believe it in my way where it's adjusting sometimes. So I know what it's like, but I have a chance to self-reflect. And Zimmer, I just don't think he self-reflected.
Well, I think Zimmer used the word, Terrence Newman was like my son. Now that's a strong word that he used. No one gave him that word to use. He used. And here's what I know, Pat. If you were to tell me something about my program that I didn't want to hear during our lifetime with our relationship, you have made a lot of deposits in our relationship. You've made a lot of deposits. So, when we have those tough conversations, I know where you're coming from. Like, I know where your heart is. I know you're not trying to throw me under the bus or trying to make me seem, less than. If you have those deposits, when those I tell my players this all the time, when those hard conversations come, you're going to be okay. Now, he used the word son. So for you to get there had to be some deposits, man.
Yeah.
There had to be some deposits for you to feel that way about Terrence Newman. that man had to have done something in your time together that you think really, really highly of. And now, just because he's not saying what you want to hear, that relationship is done. You're just going to throw it out the window. Well, for him to use the word son, that's probably the wrong word to use, because you just don't let a strong relationship. If you're going to use the word son, you don't let that strong relationship just go like that because he's saying something that you don't want to hear.
Yeah, I mean, you have a son. He comes to you. I got a son. He comes to me. Tell me, right? I'm not going to disown him just because of what he's saying, right? It'll make me reflect on what he's talking about, right? Because he's giving it to me from a different perspective.
Right.
Terrence Newman spoke on his perspective, not yours. Not like, did you feel like he was supposed to defend you? Well, he was being honest. He didn't say you were a shitty person. He said the culture was toxic. And if you're looking at it once again, look at how the relationships you had in that building were, Zim. That's toxic relationship, man.
Think about this, Pat. Think about this. This just happened a couple of weeks ago. Tua Tagovailoa came out and said all this stuff about B-Flow. And people were ready for B-Flow to fire back at Tua. What did B-Flow do? He said, I'm happy for Tua. I'm glad that he's having some success. I have self-reflected.
I have self-reflect. I've learned.
Yes, I've learned. I've grown as a coach since then, and I just wish Tua the best. That is discipline. That is professionalism, and that's what's at TCO. That's what the Minnesota Vikings organization is right now.
100%, right? So enjoy Dallas. Good luck with all the crap going on over there with your Zimmerman. Good luck with the defense. You lost Bland, right? So it was pointless to have the interview. It was pointless to have the interview. What were you going to get out of this? Some attention? There was no point in having that interview. You weren't going to, like, the people you were trying to talk about aren't with the organization no more. So, what was the purpose of I get it, to get it off your chest because you haven't answered the questions right afterwards, but what's the purpose of the interview 4 years later?
Yeah, credit to Mark Craig. Everybody had been waiting to hear Zimmer talk about his time with the Vikings. I mean, he had never said anything. And, there's going to be some out there that are going to say, well, the microphone was put in front of his face. He was asked the questions and he's got to answer it. People that say that type of stuff, they said the same thing about Tua. The microphone was put in his face. You don't have to answer questions that way. Like, his
you
time
just made the example, Coach. You just made the example in B-Flow. The microphone was put in his face.
Exactly.
Did he take the bait? Did he take the bait?
Yep. And how you respond is everything. How you respond is everything. You don't know who's watching. People are watching. People that think of you as a mentor are watching how you handle these certain situations. And to me, Mike Zimmer just failed. Another thing that came out, Paul Allen, I guess, went into business with Mike Zimmer. They bought a racehorse together. And we all know PA, man. PA is like an icon in the Minneapolis community. He's at Canterbury Park calling races.
Man, he calling the races. I've been listening to PA about the races when I'm at the tracks, Coach.
Listen, man, I've been listening to PA ever since it was PA in Dubay. That's how long I've been listening to PA. Obviously, he's not with Dubay anymore. He's doing his great show from 9 to noon on K-Fan every single day. Everybody loves PA, man. Everybody loves PA. Find one person that doesn't get along with PA. Well, according to Zimmer, PA made a comment. It was about the whole Kirk Cousins thing on the sideline, and PA made a statement on his show that he thought Mike Zimmer just snapped, when Kirk Cousins came up to him. And I guess Mike Zimmer didn't like that comment. So what he did was he paid out PA from the racehorse that they bought together, and he hasn't spoken to PA since. He says, I thought Paul Allen and I were friends. Obviously we're not. I'm sorry to say that I hold grudges. Now, this is how petty this guy is, man. This was, and it may seem like a little thing, but this was the guy that was running the Minnesota Vikings organization. Pat, I am shocked that the Minnesota Vikings were as good as they were under Zimmer with all this garbage going on within that organization.
It's sad. Number one, the part of the game is, right, like, why you coaches get paid that much money and players get paid that much money is to handle the media.
Yeah.
Whether it's radio, TV, whatever it is, podcasting, it's criticism all across the board, right? And if you can't handle someone expressing their self of what everyone nationally saw that incident. It was ugly. And you're upset because what did you want him to say? What did you want him to say? The coach shouldn't have got that hot and heated. Number one, if the only thing I didn't hear, I don't remember what PA said, right? If I like I'm gonna say it was two wrongs in that situation, right? Because I'm just being honest, coach. Where me and you come from, right? Fam, walk up on me like Kirk Cousins walked up on him, and it's gonna be a problem. Like the way he walked up on him, that's a problem, right? To push him away, to get away, but then you should have just walked away and been but only because you're paid to do that. If I'm paid to do that, I would take a different approach. But like the way Kirk Cousins was wrong the way he walked on him. PA's never done wrong to anyone. Like, he's been a human and he's done wrong. But I don't find anything wrong in doing his job.
No. No, PA's the man, man. PA's the man.
He did his job. He spoke of what he saw. Because y'all in business together, that's a conflict of interest then. Y'all probably should have never gotten business with it. Because you needed to, once you got in business, you needed to separate, okay, this man got a job to do. He gonna critique stuff of our team, blah, blah, blah. I'm a part of the team. That's it.
Yep. It's all about those deposits, Pat. Obviously he thought, Paul Allen was a friend of his, so much so that he went into business with him to buy this racehorse. And as soon as PA said, it's not like PA, called him out of his name, or he just said he snapped on the sideline. And for whatever reason, that rubbed Mike Zimmer the wrong way. And for him to take that angle at it, man, I just don't get it. I guess you got to have certain rules if you're going to be friends with Mike Zimmer.
I guess so. But I'm going to tell you right now, if he hasn't matured from what he was in leaving here, and yeah, you can have your discipline, but if he hasn't became more creative in how he's going to do it, that defense is not going to look like what it looked under Campbell. So that's what I do know. Not Campbell, but Dan Quinn, under Dan Quinn. So
he's putting the band back together. He's got Kendricks over there. He's got Linval Joseph over there, and they just signed Dalvin Cook. So I'm just amazed that Eric Kendricks is even over there with Zimmer. Obviously, I heard that they had a conversation before he got signed, and I'm sure that Eric Kendricks had to capitulate somewhat to get on that team and maybe apologize to Zimmer, or else there would be no way that he would be within the Dallas Cowboys organization. I'm just going to say this, man. You and I grew up primarily in the same years. I'm a little bit older than you are. But I'll say this, man, back in the day, when you held a certain type of job or you held a certain type of office, there was a lot of professionalism that was attached to it. Like, if you were a teacher, if you were, a doctor, somebody that interacted within the community with kids, or a coach. I remember all the coaches that I've ever had. I mean, these people, they probably weren't making a lot of money, but in my eyes, these people were heroes. When a coach said something in your community, you listen to the coach. Sometimes kids listen to their coach more than they did their parents. So there was that standard. And I think in our society right now, Pat, I think we have gotten used to a lower standard when it comes to certain positions and professionalism. I mean, you look at the highest office in the land right now, and some of the stuff that is being said from certain individuals. I don't want to get into politics or anything like that, but the standard has been lowered. The standard has been lowered in a lot of different things. That's why you can't keep coaches now in the high schools. That's why it's college coaches are suffering. Traveling coaches are suffering, and so the standard has been lowered. And to see someone like Mike Zimmer, who exhibited all these behaviors and still get recycled as a coach, man, it's just a tough thing to see. I'm not saying the guy shouldn't work. He has a right. He has a right to make a living. I'm just blown away by this story, Pat, because this was a guy like KOC who was brought in to run our team, and nobody knew this stuff was going on within the Minnesota Vikings organization. And they sold it to us as fans as he's going to be better than Leslie Frazier. He's going to be more professional, and he's going to be more disciplined than Leslie Frazier. Now, when we pull back the curtain, we're finding out that that was not the case. And here he is. I don't know if Leslie Frazier is still in the league, but here is Mike Zimmer, got a defensive coordinator job with the Dallas Cowboys, and all this stuff is coming out about some of the behaviors that he did within the Minnesota Vikings organization.
Well, he had to get with the good old boys. So he down there where placed with Jerry Jones, who does the same as him, who's the same as him. He's in that place. That's the perfect organization. If you look at it,
perfect.
We're very much more youthful than 20 years ago. The coaches that were in the league 20 years ago, there's not many of them like out here, like that were, you know what I mean? Like Zimmer's age. You don't got guys out there. You got a lot more guys that are younger, doing what they do. It's a different generation of doing it, right? Yeah, they were under the umbrellas of all those other coaches, but I mean, looking around at the league, right? Mike McCarthy and Andy Reid might be the two oldest head coaches, right? Like Mike McCarthy and Andy Reid might be the two of the oldest head coaches out there, right? Because I know Dan Quinn's a little up there, but he hasn't been around as long as they have been around,
right?
Yeah. And Mike Zimmer's one of the guys. It's kind of like Belichick thinks he's going to get a new one. Not until you change and adapt. This is a whole different generation of coaching, right?
Think about that, Pat. Think about Belichick has rings, and you would think once he got let go from the Patriots that people would have been knocking down his door for him to come to their organization and work. And there were no suitors except really the Atlanta Falcons.
Well, were they really suitors? That I asked that question, right? But I'm pretty sure that they call Robert Kraft. They ask the questions, right? These guys have relationships, right? And Jerry Jones is a GM, owner. He's everything, and he needs to step back, and he should have let somebody else do it. I wish them the best of luck, but man, you got to change up what you're doing, and I know that personally, right? Just through stuff, and when you can't, it's time to walk away when it all doesn't align with you anymore. So man, I wish him the best of luck, but guess what? You ain't put a damper in what they trying to do in that TCO stadium. That's all I say. Whatever you just said didn't put a damper in there, right? Because the only people that was over there that you could even talk about, you can talk about PA. PA ain't sweating that because PA going to get up next in the morning and do his job, right? And the Wilfs ain't thinking about it. Them people is billionaires. They is not worried about you because they got KOC in that building. So,
yeah. I think the best thing to ever happen to us was to have the team, the administrative team that we have entrenched in the Minnesota Vikings organization right now. KOC, Kwesi, B-Flow, defensive coordinator, and the Wilfs. If there was ever a staff that was going to do something significant with the Minnesota Vikings, it's going to be the people that are in the building right now. It may take some time, and I hope that Skol Nation, Viking Nation, they give this group of people time to get their people on the field, to sign people under next year's salary cap, and to roll with J.J. McCarthy. I just think some special things are going to happen in Minneapolis, man. The stars are aligning. Like, I just think this is a can't miss.
Yeah, I want somebody else to come show me what they did last year. I want another team to come show me them going 7-10 and deal with what they were dealing with when it came to the injuries last year, and with a transformation from a really 30-second defense to a 1 year trying to turn over that defense. So I want somebody else to show me that could have did a better job. You cannot. That was last year was a tough year, and I think it was one of his out of it. I know we won a division in KOC first year, but last year was his best year coaching.
Yeah.
It was his best year. Out of the 2 years, his best year, 7-10.
Yeah. We got a good crew, man, and we finally found our franchise quarterback. Hopefully while he's on the shelf this year, we'll get some good play from Sam Darnold, and then JJ comes back next year. We'll add some pieces to that defense. I think the Minnesota Vikings are going to keep rolling. We got in the future. Everybody's excited. We got in the future 2 things that are going to happen with Mr. Buchanan. We're going to roll through, Pat and myself, we're going to roll through the Vikings schedule, and we are going to figure out what the end of the season Vikings record is going to be for 2024, 2025. We're going to do that in our next podcast. And then we also have, for those of you out there that like to make a little bit of money, we are also going to have Patrick's picks, where he's going to dive into some picks that he's looked at. And for those of you that like to bet a little bit, drop some money down on it. Now, bet responsibly. We are not responsible. We are not responsible for losses of money or anything like that. We are just suggesting that if you're going to go to your sports book or however you do it, these may be some games that you may want to look at.
Yeah, that's all, right? It's just, hey, everyone, if you like to have fun, we all have different resources that we go to have fun. I can be a resource, and you put it all together, and then you make your decision. I'm not your final decision. It is my observation. That's all it is.
Hey, listen, for those you peers out there that are listening, I have listened to Pat for many years, and he has made me a couple of dollars. So I just want to say that. But again, bet responsibly. Be responsible when you're putting money down on stuff. You know, you got bills and stuff to pay. You don't want to overextend yourself. So I just can't wait for those episodes that are coming up. We're going to be rolling with Pat on that. Pat, anything you want to say to UP Nation before we get out of here?
No, man, just, enjoy the moment. The ride is about to come. There is no looking back. It is here. We got the New York Giants on our minds. We're excited about that game. I think it's going to be a rough night for Daniel Jones. I'm just being honest. We're going to talk about that when we talk about the preview. I'm thinking about how rough of a night that's about to be for Daniel Jones. Patience.
I hope you're right.
Patience, though, with our offense. So,
yeah. And for you peers out there, check out the community page. We got a couple of polls up on the community page. Our polls usually do really, really well, so we appreciate you guys going on there and answering those. We are also going to do another question and answering session next week. So those of you that want your questions read on the podcast, please send me your questions. We'll read some of those. We'll answer those and get the thing rolling next week. From your host, Mr. Patrick Buchanan, and your host, Lionel Jones, this is Unconventional Playbook. Please hit that like and subscribe button. We will see you when we see you. Latre, do your thing, man.
I don't know who I am. Can I say I'm a man? Am I losing my mind? Am I wasting my time? Do I know who I am? I don't know